Hello and welcome to Good Morning Terra, the show in which I talk about the lore of the 41st Millennium. I'm Sleeping Bear, and today we're going to be talking about the government of the Imperium of Man. Now, first off, there is one supreme ruler of the Imperium of Man, and that is the God Emperor of Man. Now, he doesn't do much actual ruling, because he sits on the Golden Throne, which is a life support engine that keeps him alive, just barely, and he's not talkative. He's not just not talkative, he's not able to speak or anything like that. So he just sits there being the emperor in the case of governing. But all authority derives from him, so all other factions and all authority figures get their authority from him, in a way. First off, I'm going to talk about Reboot Guilliman. He is the Primarch of the Ultramarines chapter of Space Marines, but he is also Lord Commander of the Imperium, which means he is in charge of all armed forces of the Imperium. And he is also Imperial Regent and first among equals in the Senatorum Imperialis. Now, the next question obviously is, what is the Senatorum Imperialis? And I'm glad you asked that, because that is the highest ruling. That used to be the highest ruling body of the Imperium. It's also called the High Lords of Terra. It consists of 12 people who represent major factions inside the Imperium of Man. But these 12 factions can actually be split into just 3 major factions or groups of factions, and then 2 extra factions who are outside the hierarchy, sort of. But that's where he sits now and is supreme ruler, sort of. But what are these 3 factions? I'm going to go into those and just talk a little bit about them. There is the Adeptus Terra, which is an umbrella organization more than an actual organization. It represents all administrative branches of the Imperium, and also, as such, all the normal armed forces and the like. Everything, if it's not specifically part of another branch of the Imperium, it's part of the Adeptus Terra. It's sort of the big, clunky, get the cogs turning thing. Yeah. Then we have the Adeptus Ministorum, which is the state church of the Imperium. They worship the God Emperor of Man, and that's the church. They are a very big factor as well. There's sometimes called the Ecclesiarchy, and the leader of them is called the Ecclesiarch as well. Now it governs it has authority over all belief and worship in the Imperium, and at times it has actually been the most powerful of all the institutions in the Imperium of Man. But restrictions have been put in place due to certain events, so that they cannot have its own standing army, apart from the Adeptus Sororitas, which we will go into later. Then, the last of the major factions is the Adeptus Mechanicus, or the Priesthood of Mars. And they govern all technology, and everything to do with technology in the Imperium of Man is somehow devoted to somehow overseen by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now, contrary to what might make sense to us as tech priests, as they are called, they are extremely conservative, and all innovation is viewed with extreme suspicion. Also, they are part of the Imperium, but they're also sort of outside the Imperium in the sense that they follow their own rules, their own church, and they worship something called the Omnissiah, and there is actual debate inside the Priesthood of Mars on whether the Omnissiah and the Emperor is the same thing. Now, it is heresy to say that they're not the same thing, but that debate sometimes rages inside the ranks of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Yeah. Lastly, we'll go into the 2 aberrations in the power structure, because everyone answers to one of these 3 groups. Most answer to the Adeptus Terra, some answer to the Adeptus Ministorum, and some answer to the Adeptus Mechanicus, but then there is something like the Inquisition. Now the Inquisition holds a permanent place in the Senatorum Imperialis, but each Inquisitor, each individual Inquisitor, and there are a lot of those, answer only to his own duty that they have sworn to the Emperor, at least in theory. If an Inquisitor goes rogue, they can be declared traitors. However, short of that, there are really no limitations on what they can do, what they can invoke, what powers they can choose to wield. They can even call down the ultimate sanction on an entire planet. This is called exterminatus, and that means that everyone on the planet dies. Everyone. No one is spared. Traitor or loyalist. Everyone dies. And that's the sort of power just one Inquisitor holds. At least in theory, because of course there are people who can stop them by shooting them or something. And lastly, we have the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. Now they are entirely outside this hierarchy. They don't normally sit on the Senatorum Imperialis, as it's called, or the High Lords of Terra, but they also don't really answer to them. They only answer to the Lord Commander of the Imperium, which now that Robert Guilliman has come, they answer to him, but short of that, they don't really answer to anyone outside their chapter. They're their own little kingdoms of sort. And that's how they roll. That's just, they are completely separate from all authority that doesn't derive from their chapter, except when there is a Lord Commander, which there hadn't been for like 8,000 years. Yep, those are the major factions of the government of the Imperium. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.